Just come across some bear prints about 50 yards from camp. Wild, remote Canadian landscapes at their absolute best. Like a bear. Okay, time to go. It is so good to be out here in the Canadian wilderness, the true Canadian wilderness. When I was cycling through North America, particularly once I hit northern British Columbia and the Yukon, I'm now entering an area known as the Serengeti of the North. You know, a huge expanse of pretty much untouched wilderness. So it was a real privilege now to be cycling amongst bison, moose, black bears, brown bears, mountain lions, wolves, and having them all on the roadside. I definitely got my eyes peeled for some wildlife. Apparently there are moose in this area. Wow. I saw moose on the roadside, huge animals, almost like the size of a horse. They can be quite territorial, and they are huge animals with great big antlers. I stopped my bike just 20 meters from this animal, and we almost had this standoff where it looked at me and it started to cross the road, and it stopped and looked at me again, and now it's got a clear run straight towards me if it wants to go for it. But actually we just sort of looked at each other for a few seconds, and it was this really special moment, and then it turned its head and carried on into the forest. This is just pure, wild, remote Canadian landscapes at their absolute best. Every day as I'm cycling now, I start having these bison encounters. Welcome to Canadian rush hour. These bison are huge creatures which might weigh a couple of tons. Funnily, they were almost terrified of the bike, and probably a novelty as this cyclist going through, you know, this remote region. They're probably not actually having many human interactions. Trucks would fly past, they weren't bothered. Cars would fly past, tourists would stop and take photos, they weren't fazed. And then I come past on my, you know, heavy expedition bike with the pedals squeaking, and the bison are terrified. And now they're charging down the road. There was something about this bike which really seemed to unsettle them. I was only glad that they weren't charging in my direction because they are quite huge animals. If I'm camping out there in the wilderness, I've got to be really aware that there's going to be bears out there. Fortunately, one night I found sort of a very basic wooden shelter. It was all open around the sides, but I thought this is going to be my best form of defending myself against the bears that might be out there. It should provide some level of protection. So I was just falling to sleep in my cabin, and I heard some footprints. In this shelter, I barricaded the doors, I set my tent, and as I was going to sleep that night, I heard this crunch, crunch, crunch in the snow outside. I don't know if you can hear it. By the time I got my camera out, unfortunately, it had gone, but it's just through the trees over there somewhere. Big animal, big footsteps. I opened up the zip, bear spray in hand, had a look outside, and staring back at me from 20 meters away, there was a moose right there. Fortunately, it wasn't that bear, but I must say it was quite a restless night's sleep after that. This is what it's all about. Dog chasing me here. Ooh. Been chased by a lot of dogs actually. It's interesting, when I think about a lot of my cycle journeys, and particularly in North America, and people ask me, well, which animals were the most dangerous? Often my answer is dogs, which might surprise a lot of people. Of course, dogs are amazing, but there's something about bikes which really seems to trigger dogs and gets them quite agitated. Very often I found myself cycling past remote ranches, remote buildings, with fences fortunately getting chased by all kinds of guard dogs. Sometimes they got out and they did get quite close, which was a little scary. I started to hear the telltale signs of wolves and the howling and the yapping and they're moving as a pack through the mountains. They can't have been more than a couple of 100 meters away from my camp. As I listened to them, it just really gave me the sense that I am in true North American wilderness here. Definitely the big thing that was on my mind was bears. I'm definitely on bear watch right now. Out there they've got grizzlies. Huge predator, huge animal, pretty terrifying. We were now on the ski section of our journey and we were skiing into base camp, and we had 8 days where we didn't see any humans, but what we did know is that this place was alive with grizzlies. And we crossed this freezing river.
It was absolutely freezing. How was it, Ryan?
We got to the other side of the river, set our camp.
Just come across some bear prints about 50 yards from camp.
We scoped out around it and found these huge grizzly bear prints, which were sort of like the size of a dinner plate, within 20 meters of our tent. And these were so fresh, these prints, that it can't have left more than 30 minutes, maybe an hour before we got there. Knowing that we were camped in prime bear country, on our own, miles from civilization, with very little to actually defend ourselves with. In the build up to this expedition, I was really worried because I knew I'd be cycling through prime bear country in spring when they're all coming out of hibernation. I'm feeling quite peckish and hoping I wouldn't be a meal on wheels. And then one day, I remember in the Yukon, I'd had a pretty rough night. I got some food poisoning the day before. I got up the next morning, I had a long day to hit the Canadian border.
Just seen my first bear. Can't believe it.
I'm all too aware this is bear country. I cross this remote stretch of road up over a hill and I see the shape off to my left-hand side.
That's the second one I've seen today. There's a bear right there. Black bear.
This is now my fear that I'd had for months. I'm seeing it right in front of me, this huge black bear peering at me from over the verge. And suddenly my whole body goes tense. I'm looking at this thing dead in the eye. This animal must be 5 times the size of me. It could kill me in one swoop of its hand. I'm now 4 meters away from this bear. And I watch it, very closely as I cycle along the road, and it watches my path.
100 yards away. Okay, time to...
As I got 50 meters past it, my heart's going like this. This bear is still watching me with its eyes very, very closely. There are no other humans around. There's nowhere to hide, there's nowhere to run. I know that if that bear starts to chase me, it can run at 35 miles an hour. There's no way I can outchase it. I can't climb a tree. There will be nothing I can do. All I've got to hope for is that that bear doesn't give chase. And I stare back at it and it just stares at me. Unfortunately, it doesn't go for it. I get a quick video and I get out of there as soon as I can.
So I did put a bit of a spurt on just to get away from the lake, but I literally cycled within 4-5 meters of that bear.
And it was interesting because this creature, which I'd spent so long fearing and having nightmares about and cold sweats about, now I look it in the eyes on the roadside as it watches me cycle past, and it's just a big fluffy animal with fluffy ears and a fluffy face, and actually really not that interested in me. As I reflect now, it was a really special encounter with that animal. I would say the black bear at close range was probably my best animal encounter. As I'm journeying through there with no other humans around, we think about North America, we think of this commercialized, built-up country. But actually, what I saw of it was the true wilderness that still exists in this part of the world. And for me, that's the thing that we often forget about. So one part of this journey, which was a real highlight actually, was all those wildlife encounters, all those animal encounters that I was having along the way.